there was a really interesting article that came out, and it was actually a very scary article in a way, but it just shows how the establishment, as we've talked about on this show, as we always talk about, the establishment is totally, completely, utterly in the tank to screw over progressives, to screw over regular people, more importantly, regular people, but their so-called push for, decent healthcare policy and decent healthcare, initiatives in this country is just bullshit. And I wanted to read you guys an article here. It's from The Intercept. The author is Li Fang. I'm sorry, I still don't know how to say his name. Li Fang, though, he's a very, very good journalist at The Intercept. And the title of this article that he wrote here is called "Lobbyists Working to Undermine Medicare-For-All Host Congressional Staff at Luxury Resort." And it's like a view of, what is it called? Salamander Resort. It's in Virginia, and a spa. It's a resort and spa in Middleburg, Virginia, which is near Washington, D.C., obviously. So it says, I'm going to read parts of this article here. It says, at a luxury resort just outside of the nation's capital last month, around 4 senior congressional staffers decamped for a weekend of relaxation and discussion at Salamander Resort and Spa. It was an opportunity for Democrats and Republicans to come together and listen to live music from the Trailer Grass Orchestra, sip surprisingly impressive glasses of Virginia wine, and hear from healthcare lobbyists focused on defeating Medicare for All. It says the event was hosted by a group called Center Forward and featured a lecture from industry lobbyists leading the charge on undermining progressive healthcare proposals. Center Forward was originally known as the Blue Dog Research Forum. They were smart to change that name because blue dogs are obviously known as corporate Democrats. A think tank affiliated with the conservative Blue Dog Coalition of House Democrats. The coalition has pressed the caucus to oppose social welfare spending, taxes on the wealthy, and regulations on business. So basically, they're just like Republicans. It says the organization's website is filled with bromides about giving centrist allies the information they need to craft common sense solutions that paper over an agenda designed to enrich powerful corporations. Center Forward's big idea on Medicare Part D, for instance, is to maintain lobbyist-authored provisions of the law that bar the government from bargaining for lower prices for medicine. Such restrictions cost taxpayers and patients as much as $73 billion a year, while boosting the profits of drug makers. So basically, you're just sucking up to the insurance industry and the insurance lobby, essentially. So they basically obviously don't want lower prices, so they lobby against that. So such restrictions, let me just read this part again. Such restrictions cost taxpayers and patients as much as $73 billion a year while boosting the profits of drug makers. Center Forward endorses the idea with the testimonial from Mary Greeley, a lobbyist for a trade group that represents pharmaceutical companies. The retreat held the weekend of April 5th to the 7th in Middleburg, Virginia, and continued Center Forward's approach. It says the schedule shows that the healthcare discussion was led by Center Forward board member Liz Greer, a lobbyist at Forbes Tate. The firm manages the Partnership for America's Healthcare Future Coalition, designed to undermine Medicare for All. Paul Kidwell, a lobbyist from the Federation of American Hospitals, and Larry Levitt from the Kaiser Family Foundation also spoke. No proponents of Medicare for All were included. Big surprise. Kidwell's trade association is part of the Partnership for America's Healthcare Future group opposing single payer. By the way, the what is it called again? The Partnership for America's Healthcare Future it's basically a group that is fighting single payer and Medicare for All, and they have a Twitter They have a Twitter account, and they're just like constantly putting out all these like ridiculous like anti-Medicare-For-All takes, and just like all like at least from a couple of the tweets that I've seen, like their shit gets ratioed big time. So like obviously a lot of progressives see this and they ratio the shit out of this account who makes these like absurd talking point, puts out these absurd talking points and makes these arguments that are just bullshit, obviously. So yeah, it's funny. And then I remember there was a parody account that's called, I think it's Parasites for America's Healthcare Future. And it changes partnership to parasites. So it's basically like mocking the fact that obviously these pricks are, screwing over regular people and they're parasites. And yeah, so, I also wanted to point out this other part that says, it points out the people, so the politicians. So not only the politicians, but the staffers that were involved, but the politicians that attended this event. It says several aides, Democratic leadership filled disclosures showing that they received paid travel to attend their Center Forward retreat, including chiefs of staff to Majority Whip James Clyburn from Democrat of South Carolina, and Majority Leader Steny Hoyer, Democrat of Maryland. The retreat included chiefs of staff to leading centrist Democrats, including Representatives Kurt Schrader, Democrat of Oregon, Dan Lipinski, Democrat of Illinois, and I have no idea how to say this name. Cocktail? Sorry, I don't know how to say it. Cocktail Torres Small, a Democrat from New Mexico. Officials from the Blue Dogs, Problem Solvers Caucus, and the New York Democrats were also in attendance. Let's see. It says, unlike the previous branding of Blue Dogs, who were once built a big tent designed to bring conservative ideas into the Democratic Party, the centrist push now explicitly includes Republicans, senior aides to Reps Sean Duffy from Wisconsin, Rodney Davis from Illinois, Will Hurd from Texas, all attended the retreat as well. So it's it's a bipartisan. It's good to know that it's a bipartisan event. So it's not just Democrats, but that's still pretty bad. Obviously, because Republicans and Democrats are palling around and basically getting together to screw over regular people and fight against Medicare-For-All because they're so scared of it. It says the Ethics Committee rules bar registered lobbyists from arranging luxury travel for Congress. Although Center Forward's board is made up of almost entirely a registered corporate lobbyist, the event forms were signed by the group's executive director, Corey Kramer, who is not a registered lobbyist, a technicality. So, yeah, a technicality that helped elide the prohibition on lobbyist-funded travel. So basically, they skirted the rules to get that person to be, I guess, part of that. Yeah, to be part of that event, and then kind of help lobby all these politicians. But she's not technically a lobbyist. It says the forums show the group spent as much as $560 per congressional aide for transportation, food, and lodging. The host list speaks for itself, said Wendell Potter, president of Business Initiative for Health Policy. This event wasn't about fixing the healthcare system. It was about protecting the healthcare industry, no matter the cost to the patients, families, workers, or employers. The industry is the root cause of our healthcare crisis. A congressional staffer serious about finding solutions wouldn't touch that retreat with a 10-foot pole. So yeah, Wendell Potter is a very he's a great guy. He's a great healthcare reform advocate. He's been around forever. He was actually, I think he was a former executive or something of a health insurance company. So he was basically in the business of helping screw over people that were like trying to get health insurance and trying to, they were part of some sort of, pharmaceutical, plan or health insurance plan or something. Like they had some sort of, obviously they were paying to be part of that company's, health insurance, and then he would help screw over and kick people off those plans. So, and then after that, at some point he became kind of obviously disillusioned and disgusted with what this company and many of the other companies were doing. So he essentially became a whistleblower, and he came out and he spoke out against these companies and said that, obviously these companies, what they're doing is horrible. I'm not going to be a part of this anymore. I feel disgusted. I feel horrible about what the things I'm doing to people. And, it's good to see. And he's been around forever. He was going, I remember he was back when I was watching, MSNBC when it was decent. And he was going on shows like Countdown with Keith Olbermann. He was talking to Keith Olbermann many times and kind of discussing his experiences when he was, part of that that specific, I forgot which company it was, but that specific health insurance company. And he's a great guy, and he seems to be these days. I don't hear from him that much, but I'm sure he's a big time progressive, and he probably meets regularly like progressive politicians and groups and stuff. I'm sure he's met with Bernie Sanders and stuff, so that's good to see. But yeah, man, this article is scary though. The fact that they can get just like a few staffers and a few politicians to come on these retreats and wine and dine them, giving, what was that? It said $560 for like every congressional staff or congressional whatever politician or staff or whatever. $560 is nothing. I mean, that's a drop in the bucket for these people, and that's why. I mean, they're able to bribe them essentially. In this case, well, obviously it's a bribe, but like they're able to buy them off for like this smallest tiny amount just to get them to a retreat, and then in that case they can, basically get them on board to push for these policies that are obviously horrible and screwing over regular people. And I mean, Kyle Kalinske from Secular Talk was, he mentioned this when he was talking about this article, but he said that Richard Ojeda, who was a former Republican and former Trump voter, he ran for the Democratic nomination for a congressional seat in West Virginia. Was it what? Yeah, West Virginia. And he made a proposal. Kyle was mentioning it. He was talking about how he made the proposal about how, I think it was either the politicians or the lobbyists, one of them, have to wear a body camera whenever they meet. So whenever a politician and a lobbyist meet, I guess, I don't know, he said the lobbyist should wear a body. They should make that the law. So that would be a great idea. Like, because then what would you expect to happen in a conversation between a lobbyist and a politician? Because remember, a lot of these conversations that happen between these lobbyists and politicians, they're covert conversations. They're kept secret. Nothing is let out. Nobody really hears about the details of it, obviously, other than, unless, somewhere to do a report on it, and just, that lobbyist or that politician would give like very minimal details. But imagine what would happen if there was a body camera on one of those, people, or on both of them, whatever, and you could hear their conversation. Obviously, they wouldn't want the details of that conversation to get out, so they would obviously make sure to, not say the certain things they would want to say. They obviously wouldn't want to have that body camera on them. So they would never discuss those kind of, the kind of ways that they're fucking over people, and, the kind of things that they're saying in reality, they're saying it in secret. They wouldn't say it in front of a camera. So, I mean, and I would, to be a fly on that wall, to hear those conversations that a lobbyist and a politician are having, I mean, or even a lobbyist and the a staffer for a politician, whatever these dirty ass fucking lobbyists are saying, I would love to hear what they're saying when they're pitching their ideas to screw over people and to push for these awful policies that they're obviously unpopular, but it's popular among politicians. Obviously unpopular among regular people, but among politicians, are like, hell yeah, you want to give me, you want to bribe me with, this deal? Yeah, here's a couple $1,000 I can give you, or let's do a fundraiser or something, just so you don't vote in favor of Medicare-For-All, or you try and kill Medicare-For-All, or, don't push for any kind of reform, or you push for keeping Obamacare the way it is, because Obamacare obviously is still a huge giveaway to the insurance companies. So yeah, it's pretty sad how easily it is to buy off these politicians. So it wasn't good enough to just buy them off just with financial contributions and fundraisers. No, now they're taking them to resorts, and they're kissing their ass, and they're letting them stay in like these luxury hotels and shit. Like, that's, wow. I mean, you gotta be a fucking sucker to fall for that kind of, like, you're that desperate to like get wined and dined that you're just gonna like go to a resort. Yeah, okay, now I'm gonna vote against a policy that's gonna help regular people. And I don't know. I mean, I don't really. A lot of these things, a lot of the times you read these stories and you're like, a lot of times like, yeah, of course they're going to be like. But every now and then, especially with stories like this, you come across a story where you see somebody that is, you come across a story where you see these people just being absolutely heartless and just saying things that are just, I mean, it kind of blows your mind sometimes. And you don't want to believe it. You don't want to believe it. You don't want to believe that this is actually happening. You don't want to come to the realization that politicians are doing as much as they're doing. Like, they're already doing a lot, but you don't want to accept that they're doing so much to the point that it's like, it's even worse than what it already is, And I mean, that's why we have to fix this political system. That's why we have to get money out of politics. We have to get to free and fair elections. We have to make sure that these politicians can't get away with doing these things that benefit them financially and then screw over the rest of us, not only financially, but screw us over in our lives, in our regular lives,